back to the Cruxmen. I am Papa. This is Salt. He's already lit up. I'm a bit jealous. He's being ambitious this evening. That's okay. It's okay. I, as you can see, am decked out. Star Spangled Banner for 4th of July, because that was this week. So welcome to the 4th of July Spectacular.
Yes, indeed. What a glorious holiday that I didn't celebrate, as we were just talking about a second ago.
So tell me your woes. Why did you opt to not celebrate?
Well, I would have, but my other half did not want to. She was just like, "No, I'm good to go."
Oh,
My munchkin, my other half.
that half. Got it. She didn't want to do nothing.
She was like, "Let's stay home. Let's binge watch The Last of Us, the show," and she was happy with that. And I was like, "Well, fine." You know, it's kind of jacked up too. Now, granted, this had nothing to do with why she wanted to go, but why she didn't want to go. But I woke up in the morning yesterday, and there was, I think, 2 or 3 mass shootings, like July 4th festivities, like shootings. And I was like, why does anyone want to go do anything in a group at all ever these days? So I had that in the back of my head, like, okay, like just in case, But I'm sitting there looking at that, and so when she said, I don't really want to go do anything, let's just stay home and watch the show, I was like, you know what? Sounds great. Let's just do that. So I wasn't even tripping. I wasn't even arguing with her.
So how much of the news is she read in on? Like, do you think that actually played a factor, or is she clueless?
No, not that she's clueless, but she could care less. I don't think that doesn't impact her decision, like
No.
decision making. But she just wasn't, unless it was like convenient, which it wasn't, because we missed a lot of people. A lot of areas were doing their July 4th celebration, like the fireworks portion. They do that on the 3rd. They didn't even do it on the 4th. So I was like, well, we're gonna have to go hunt down. Yeah.
Glitch in the matrix. All right.
Yeah, big time. So yeah, like a lot of places are celebrating on the 3rd, which I was like, okay, fine. So we could have gone out and saw some fireworks on the 3rd, but yeah, she didn't want to go drive anywhere to go see anything. She was just like, let's just stay home. I was like, what's your call? For me, I don't have to go see fireworks. Like, I really don't care. Last year was super convenient. So it was just right there. We didn't have to go anywhere. This year it's just kind of like, screw it. Let's just watch, because we won't want to watch this show for like forever. So we did that instead.
You know what, man?
Had a blast.
I'm not even mad at you, because I did something similar but completely different. I spent my day in the airport, but that's because we were coming back from Alabama. We were out there visiting my family for a few days, and that in and of itself was an experience that I can get to in a minute. But by the time we got home after being in an airport, from Alabama to Vegas, my kids were just exhausted. My wife and I were exhausted. So I actually laid in bed, because I've told you before I don't have curtains on my windows. But randomly enough, the fireworks in Vegas were going off, and I could see them laying in bed looking out. I've got big bay windows in my room, and I just sat there and watched everything. Yeah, so from like 9 to 9:30, I just laid in bed, watched the fireworks pop off, and then I passed out.
I mean, that's what we would have done had we walked down the street on the 3rd. But yeah, I saw people walking down the street too, like their lawn chairs. I'm thinking like, where are they headed? Didn't even like, and I'm thinking like there must be like fireworks today. Then maybe we're gonna do like a bigger one tomorrow or something like that. Yeah, that was it. Game over. Set match. I was like, well,
Okay.
whatever. So we could have driven about 40 minutes and saw something yesterday. But like I said, she was just like, no, I'm good. So she's not difficult to please. This one, she's pretty chill. She's about as bad as I am. You know, so it's not like it's her first rodeo. She's seen it a bunch. You know, her priorities were, I want to watch this show. Like, all right, bet, let's do that.
So I didn't feel bad about my girls missing fireworks last night either, because my dad. So a little glimpse into what Alabama life is. So I've been for the past couple of summers, I've been taking my girls back to Alabama for a couple of weeks during the summer for them to see, my sister's got a couple kids and they live back there so they can hang out with their cousins, do the Alabama life, the chickens and pigs and, other random, farm animals. He's got the tractors and the gator and he's got this massive zip line he put in across, just like one section of the property. And I say one section of the property because there's 180 acres. So massive piece of property. Several of the family members still live there. So my dad lives there, his brother, his sisters, and all their kids are all still there or close by. So, zip lining, tractor riding, farming, taking care of chickens, all these different things, right? But it's in Alabama and it's super humid, meaning everything's always kind of damp. So he went out and so fireworks are legal out there as opposed to like in whatever Vegas or California, wherever they're not legal because it's so dry. So my dad goes gets a bunch of fireworks and gives the kids lighters and the fireworks and says, "Get after it." They just go out there in the yard and they're just throwing stuff out in the yard and watching things fire off. And so they didn't just get to watch the fireworks. My dad taught them how to light them and run away from them. Yeah. So it was good, man. They had a good time on their Alabama visit, but I had a great time just going back for the couple of days we were there and visiting. It was fun, man. Sitting on my grandmother's porch. My aunt makes these mega Bloody Marys, and when I say mega, I mean like it's a 32-ounce mug. So or maybe it could be a 40. It might be a 40-ounce mug. It's a massive mug with a big old handle. So she'll mix up her special because she makes them from scratch. So she'll mix her own special thing, a Bloody Mary mix. Fill that bad boy up to the top, and then she'll have all these sticks, and the sticks that she tops this Bloody Mary with. I'll show you a
Sliders.
picture. She's got sliders on one, fried chicken on another, meatballs and pepper jack cheese on another, and then she garnishes all that with bacon that she just puts in between, and then olives if you want olives, and limes and celery. I mean, it's an entire like 4-course meal on top of a Bloody Mary. So I mean,
When you first told me about that, and I was like, "Holy smokes!" And I don't even do Bloody Marys. Like, I'm not. Only Bloody Mary I actually appreciated was one that you made me some years ago. But other than that, I'm like, not like my cup of tea. But that one you're talking about, that your own puts together, I'd be
yeah,
down for that. I'd be down to
yeah,
try that. I'm like sliders and meatballs and chicken. Holy smokes! In the mug.
yeah,
Yeah, that sounds
yeah,
intense.
yeah.
It's an
And for
experience.
some reason, it's like the bacon dipped in there. It gives a little hint of a bacon flavor to the Bloody Mary, but
Mm,
you also get a little bit of that Bloody Mary on your deep fried bacon. It's just
yeah,
look.
that sounds
It's a heart.
outstanding.
It's a heart attack in a mug, but I can go through a couple of them.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
Got to do what you got to do. So outside of that, just my dad has a pool as well, so playing with the pool, and my dad and his brother and my cousins, they all just bought these $3,000 RC cars. So
Nice.
they run off of like I think they're like 50, 55 mile an hour off-road cars. So because there's such a huge piece of property, my dad and my uncle went out and built their own dirt track, and they built a stand that's elevated about 8 feet above so you can watch everything.
Yeah.
So they have their own legitimate RC track, and we're out there, and it's me, a couple of my cousins, my dad, my uncle. They had an extra car, so we had 5 cars line up and just like just wild, man. And these cars, like they're live axle. I mean, and they're quad drive, cars. So all 4 tires are pulling, and they're just sideways around turns, and it's just you sitting there with the remotes, just doing
No,
what you can do.
those take
And I,
gas.
oh
Those
yeah,
are gas. Yeah, yeah,
they're essentially a weed eater mower or a motor, weed eater
yeah.
motor. So you gotta prime them and then pull start them, and they just wing, and it's all or nothing when you hit that trigger too, man. So you're like setting up for the turns, and then like you cut it hard to get into that slide, and you start drifting into the because it's dirt track, so you start drifting into it, let off the gas a little bit, and then as soon as you start to slide out of that turn, you're on it again. Just nuts, man. So
Sounds
I think I think my dad set all this up to try to lure me back to Alabama because he knows he's like, look, we got a zip line for the kids and a pool and the RC cars and the racing, and I do miss it. And I'll even tell you, my wife, we left and we got back home to Vegas last night. And she goes,
I
I
can do
think
it.
I would be okay moving back. Yeah, I was like, what? What? First time in 10 years she's ever been like, I could do that. So,
Yeah. Options galore. Options galore. Hmm. Mm-mm. That
so
sounds
we'll
awesome.
see.
I mean, I don't know. It's nothing like that, man. Yeah. Got a family down there. Little chill living. No stress, relatively, I guess, down that way. I don't know. I don't know what
I
that's
mean,
even like, but it sounds chill, like a lot of fun. You know.
it
Uh,
is. And I think if I keep my business outside of Alabama, it will remain to be chill. You know what I mean? Like versus getting into business with family members or something like that down there, like there's some businesses that are very hands off that I'd be okay being an investor in.
yeah.
And then there's others where it's like you got to work with each other all the time. And I love my family, I love them to pieces, but I also know the ingredients for uh, I
Disaster.
guess disaster. Yeah. So
Because I think, I mean, I
uh,
guess you could say like once if you were to go down there, like all that, oh my God, he's back, and all that, like you could do that. You could relive that every time because you've been gone for a while. Nobody gets to see you. But then so you're just kind of there every single day. It's just kind of like okay, like then like I guess the BS can kick in, you know,
yeah.
where it's kind of like now you're part of that. Now it's no longer fun. He's like, yo, I'd
Well,
rather
and
be someplace else. Do this in small doses, kind of thing, you know.
I was there for 2 days, and it started to kick in, but it started to kick in on that the other side that I've talked to you about before. So yeah, I won't even go there, man. That just won't
Yeah,
even go there.
yeah. So
It's a sad, sad state of affairs.
it's unfortunate. Truly is. Truly is. I wish
So
yo,
I
because we used to
I
wish we could
avoided
redo.
it all. I avoided it all while I was down there, though, man. We had a great time.
Let's go back to the meat real quick. So you were talking about the sliders and the Bloody Mary and all that, chicken and all that. It's something I want to ask you some time ago. So I had seen this episode. There was an episode about this on the show called The Future of on Netflix. Very interesting show. It talks about all these visionaries about where the future is going to go and all this other good stuff. In particular, there's an episode talking about food. And with the food, in the future, we're not going to be eating potentially real meat. It's going to be there's this food that they call cultivated meat that they're growing in a petri dish. Essentially, they take these animal cells and they're growing this shit. So like it's about a week ago or so, I see this article, and cultivated
It
meat
was
is like
just
on the
passed.
shelf. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah,
out there, and I'm like, yo, like it's already happening. Like, how do you feel
yeah.
about fake meat? Because they're doing it to save the animals and to save the ozone, but then they're creating these factories that are polluting just as much, and the meat isn't really meat, and it doesn't taste the same, from what I understand. But I think eventually you're going to perfect it. You're not going to know if you're eating real stuff or fake stuff anyway. So
I mean, they've been
whatever.
trying to do that with like Boca burgers and soy burgers and protein, plant protein
Beyond
based.
burgers and all that.
all that kind of stuff. So they've been doing that
Yeah.
for a while, I think. But the petri dish thing, in in an effort to save the animals, I would say, okay, what exactly, which animals are we trying to save? And I'll let me further this for a second, right? So this is not something you and I discussed prior. So this is just off the cuff,
It
raw, unfiltered from me.
was time
If
for you.
you're eh, if you're trying to save the animals in the massive farms that they're the cows that never move more than a foot in either direction, they're just packed in, slaughterhouse style, whatever. If those are the animals you're trying to save because to make it a cruelty free world, okay, one, you're going to put a lot of folks out of business, maybe that you don't care about. But two, where are these animals going to go? How large are we going to allow their populations to get before it becomes a government mandate, just like shooting coyotes, that you can go and shoot cows because they're wandering in the streets and people are, in their Suburbans or cruising down a back highway at 55. They smoke a cow and their whole family gets killed because we're just being overrun by livestock. You know what I mean? Like, so what's the goal, I guess, right? I mean, it's like, oh, you want to have a steak? Okay, well, we're going to grow you one in a science facility somewhere. Uh, but what happens to all the other ones? I guess
Well,
where
see, what if they release them into the wild and nature handles them anyway? It's not like they got survival skills. You know what I'm saying? They send them out into, I don't know, wherever, and then nature's gonna take care of them. That'll weed out that population. Not gonna say quickly,
well,
but
well,
they're not
and
gonna
and and
last.
and who?
They suffer anyway.
So I don't know, man. Like that's that. I think that's the far extreme that I was going, obviously, but where? Yeah, no surprise there. But I guess what's the overall drive? Like, okay, save the animals, cruelty free environment. Um, I mean,
Or
is it to
source. Just say like, we run out. They talk about overpopulation. Say like, there's not enough cows anymore, whatever. At least we have like an alternative means of creating a food source. Even though I keep hearing that they're gonna go to the insects next anyway, in terms of like a real protein. Start mashing up a bunch of bugs, Akuna Matata style. Start making burgers and brats and all that with, you know, the infinite amount of insects running around the world. Uh, I think just to give us more options, even though we're already the apex of apexes. Now we gotta. I mean, so, it would be a perk though for places. Now, granted, I'm already like, I don't know. People frustrate me because there's so much food out there, but yet there's famine still, which is mind blowing. So
yeah?
like maybe if you can now, I guess you do this cultivated meat. At least now you can feed more people, which still there's still gonna be famine regardless of the fact. You know what I'm saying?
I don't think you're going to be able to feed more people, and I think it's because
It's
look,
all
the
controlled.
yes,
It's all
yes,
controlled, which is jacked up.
governments control these food supplies and
Yeah,
supply chains and stuff
there's
like
more
that.
than enough for
So
everybody, but
yeah,
they're not
and
gonna
it's
feed
not
everybody.
just governments, but there's also the different I guess I want to say gang, mob, mafioso, all the different, cartels and whatever else
Yeah.
that that don't give a fuck about feast and famine. You know
No.
what I mean?
Yeah.
They care about their supply train and controlling the population. And one way to control folks is to say, we'll give you a food stipend if if you obey, and if you don't, we're going to starve you to death. I mean, North Korea's been doing it for decades.
No. It's wild. It's wild.
So I don't buy that this creates more options for food because it all has to come from somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're mashing up bugs, it's like what's he saying? in Wedding Crashers when they go quail hunting. He's like, they're decimating the grubworm population. It's like, that's gonna be us. We're gonna be decimating the grubworm population. You said Akuna Matata. That's what they were eating. Were grubworms.
Yeah, that's right. The grub. I mean, you know what though? Like beyond like okay, people just being selfish or whatnot. We could, being that they're not going to be able to take necessarily livestock with them. We start colonizing. Say we head out to Mars or whatever. That would be a way if they can perfect that technology where I don't know, it doesn't take forever to. Maybe it's like a pill. I have no idea, but you can stick it in like a microwave kind of a deal, and it turns into like a steak dinner off of like a few animal cells or whatever. And you take that to Mars, and now you've got meat on Mars. Even though it's not tasting the same, it reminds you of home. You know, until kids start getting born out there, they're like, huh. They have no idea what real cow tastes like. For them, that is chicken, that is beef, that is pork. But that'd be a way to have livestock without taking the livestock. You know,
Well,
maybe
I
that's what we're
tell
headed.
you, my wife has been wanting to go more and more off the grid, and I
I don't
think
blame
some of this is very much a part of that. Like, but there's and I grew up on a farm, right? But you have to understand, there's the cute and cuddly livestock animals that you see. It's like, oh, the family cow and the family pig and the family chickens that the kids named them all. And then the one asshole rooster that you want to kill but you can't because he's the rooster. He protects the chickens.
Cornelius.
Yeah, fucking hey over there, the fucking squawking asshole, waking everybody up at 4:30 in the morning. But but then there's the other part, right? It's like, okay, if you want to live off the grid, you have to learn to separate. Yeah, you're not raising, what's a clever chicken name, little or cow, right? You're not raising Betsy to be in the family forever.
Yeah,
You're raising Betsy because once she's full grown, she's either going to be providing you milk until she can't, and then you're going to off her, or you're not going to breed her. Therefore, she's not going to produce milk. So she's going to get full grown and fatty, and you're going to have to put that thing in there,
yeah,
the side of their head. And
yeah,
then you got to clean them up and do all the things and throw them in a deep freeze because Betsy's actually going to feed your family for a couple of years or however long a full grown cow lasts, right?
yeah,
So,
absolutely. That the real side of life.
yeah,
Another
yeah.
side. I need to like,
So,
honestly like get. I mean, granted, I don't want to go that deep off the grid because I don't have it in me. I'm used to, for me, I've only come up with places where I could just walk into the store, grab a pack of meat, and walk out and just go cook it. I've never slaughtered nothing aside from a rabbit. I could barely even kill that bad boy. I was like, dang. But you know what? If you're hungry enough, you'll do what you got to do. That's one thing that I know. Like I don't care. Like this is what I've been telling people. Some of these folks are like, well, I don't eat meat because I don't. I want to say that. Listen, you get hungry enough. You see that even that cat running around, he's gone. You know what I'm saying? You're gonna want protein. You're gonna want all those different things. And your diet
hey,
be damned. You're gonna go do what you gotta do. Period. Dot.
you remember that movie based on those hikers that were freezing to death? The movie is called Alive.
Oh, alive. Yeah, the soccer team. Or no, a rugby team or soccer team, something like that. They got stuck out there in the mountains and they were eating booty meat.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Look,
You gotta do what
that
you gotta do. Ah,
I'm just saying, I'm sure one of them was a vegetarian, but you get hungry enough, you will eat another human.
100%. I mean, I
I
don't ever want
mean,
to push there, but yeah, like they're dead anyway. They didn't have to kill anybody. What's the harm in that? I mean, shit.
you got to
Yeah,
survive. You got to
yeah.
survive.
Feast or famine.
That's it.
When them hunger pangs start kicking in, yeah, you're gonna be desperate. So all
Yeah.
that. It's easy to say that. I mean, we're the only ones that do all that crap, though, right? You go to some of these other countries living that real life. There's no, they're not all this vegan or all this dietary BS. They're just trying to just survive, man. Like we're too fat on the hog. Where you'd be like, well, you know what? I should probably maybe I just want to do only vegetables, because the
But
vegetables are readily available. Like just walking the produce and all that other crap.
and you know what? the people who care the most, or at least give the projection that they care the most about, oh, so and so starving, and the dogs and the pounds, and they donate and da da da, we want to save everybody and blah 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 blah, and they're the same ones bringing up these incredibly first world issues of, let's find other ways to make meat and do this and harvest da da da. Now I'm not saying that I'm hating on them. It's all seemingly for a good cause,
Yeah.
but sitting here and talking about it, right, while you're complaining about your kale salad that you paid $35 for, that didn't have extra soy fucking biscuits on it or whatever, like, it just doesn't quite make sense to me, like,
Yeah.
because I also don't. I mean, what are you gonna do? Like, you're gonna go over to some third world country where 90% of the population is legitimately starving on a daily basis, and be like, and go, hey, do you want a vegan salad,
Yeah.
or are you gonna show up with a cooked pig and some barbecue sauce and go, which one would you rather have?
Yeah.
And let them choose. They're not they're not taking the fucking salad.
I'm saying what I hate, what my pet peeves in life, right, is to travel in this world with, I would just say, an American type, right? Very picky diet, whatever, right? You go someplace where there's people less fortunate than yourself, and these folks are going out of their way. Like, they're probably giving you like their last, right? I've sat with folks that this, like, they don't have a whole lot, but yet they're trying to be hospitable, and they're preparing a meal, which I'm like, yo, you don't have to do this, but for them it's like, yo, you're our guest, we're gonna take care of you, all this good stuff. Only for someone in my company that that I'm there with be like, I can't eat that. And I'm like, looking, I'm like, you better have at least, you better eat something. Actually, clean the goddamn plate. Like, that is the most disrespectful shit on the planet. And granted, like, I get it, but like, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't disrespect people like that. Even for
Right.
me, like, there's stuff that I'm just kind of like, that looks questionable. I really don't know if I'm gonna like it, and I may not even like it. But I choke that mess down because I'm not gonna disrespect. And then they're so like, oh my god, like, you love it. Oh, would you like some more? Like, whew. Actually, I'm full. Thank you so much, but I'm full. But I'm not gonna disrespect anybody when I go to their
Yeah.
place. And even if it's a vegan or whatever, I don't care what it is. I'm coming through. I'm eating because you prepared me a meal, and I appreciate every single bit of that. And I'm gonna show you that by eating it. You know
So
what I mean? And
so
props to the
so
chef.
so is there a line? There's got to be a line in the sand somewhere, though. I mean, if you go somewhere in South America and they come out and they got like their delicacy.
Yeah. Monkey brains or something.
No, and it's got six legs sticking up, and it's a beetle about that big around that they cooked for you, and mm-hmm, you see the man at the head of the table sit down, and he grabs that bad boy up with his
Slurp.
fingers,
Indiana
pops it in
Jones
his
style.
mouth. You hear it crunching. He's got a little leg still hanging out his mouth. Are you going to be disrespectful?
You know what? I'm gonna do my best. I'm gonna tell you like this. First, I'm like, oh, is this what we're eating? This is what's on the menu, huh? I was like, there's no option.
Because I'm a straight Euro trip that situation. Be like, this is not where I parked my car, and I'm out. Like,
You know what? And that's, and you know that is where I would I would probably have to say, like, I'm so sorry I can't do this. However, I would attempt. So I'd be like, we just don't eat this in America. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like a normal thing. And they know it, probably just to kind of push my buttons. I'm not Anthony Bourdain. Let's just be clear. I'm not Anthony Bourdain. I'm out here just trying everything. However, once again, though, if I'm looking at these folks and they're being extremely polite, nice, all that good stuff, and they made me something, I'm going to at least attempt. And then I'm going to have a hell of a story to tell about how I cried
we we we
and I
want
was,
we want you to eat this, and after you have this, you can have our daughter. And you look at her daughter, and the daughter's like a 12 out of 10. I feel like you're popping them in like Skittles at that point. Just
it's rough. I mean, it's not you read the book uh How to Eat a Worm or something like that. Like old school book, whatever. These kids are eating worms and like having challenges. They're frying or put them in ketchup and all that other good stuff.
I
Like
know what you're talking about. It's
it's not how to eat a worm. It's something that I
no.
can't remember. Uh, I don't know.
I know exactly. I
Yeah.
my daughter Capri. We've read it. I know what you're talking
Yeah.
about. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, like that's. I don't know. Like for me, and this is honestly like even in Japan, right? There were things that I ate that I was just like, yo, like I would have never ate this if I wasn't here. So like maybe if everybody else is jamming on it and they're just like, yo, like try it, da da da. I'm like, I might just do it. Yeah, I mean, you'll see my face turn all kinds of colors and whatnot. You know what I'm saying? But I think I'd have to do it just to say that I did, just to be like, you know what? It's just not my cup of tea. Appreciate it, right? I'll take like a little bite, but I'm not gonna kill a plate of it. I'm like, hey, no more for you guys, huh? Just pass me the drink. How about that?
Well, you know what? You know what the thing is
Uh,
for me, it's not to totally kind of take a left turn here, but for me, it's a texture thing. You know what I mean? Like
absolutely.
there's certain textures that are just kind of weird. So like a crispy bug with a juicy inside, it already just doesn't sound appetizing.
It explodes in your mouth.
But if it was put in front of me at a, you know, dining in the dark type of situation
Yeah.
and I popped it in my mouth, I might be like, "Oh,
What is that?
man, what did you fry this with? That's really it's got a nice crunch and
Yeah.
like a gravy on the inside.
Mhm.
Outstanding." And they're like, "Oh, yeah, that's the large dung beetle from South America."
Yeah, yo, honestly, like there's a few times, and I told people this. I was like, yo, lie to me, just lie to me. You want me to try something? Lie to me, or don't tell me anything. Like I just need something, just so I don't go in there with my preconceived ideas of what it's gonna taste like, what's gonna be like, da da da, or what it is. You know what I mean? And I think I'd be good with that. Like I ate. I thought so. This is what I thought. I was at a rest stop on the toll roads out in Japan, right? We stop. I get my normal like meat on a stick. You know what I'm saying? Some beef, crushing it, and I'm eating. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of tough. I was like, man, maybe we got some old sticks or something like that. Like, I don't, even though like it looked like they kind of cooked it fresh. I'm crunching. I'm killing. I had like three of them. I'm like, yo, you guys ever like had any issues like this with the meat? Like nobody else is questioning it. They're like, oh, it's not like yeah, it's beef, but it's not like the normal meat. I was like, what do you mean? Like you ate some tongue. It's like tongue. It was like, but it was chewy, But I didn't know it was tongue. And then suddenly when I heard tongue, I was like, huh. You know what I mean? But like, I didn't want to eat anymore. I had like a stick and a half left of like meat left, and I couldn't do it. But if I didn't know, I was good. So I think if
Yeah.
as long as I'm like lied to, and they just like, oh, just try it, whatever, because it's like really good. Oh, it's just like a delicious
Yeah.
delicacy or whatever. Not even don't say delicacy because now my head's already running. If you just lie to me, just be
You're,
like, yo, just try this meat. It's really tender, whatever. I'm like,
you're,
okay,
you're sitting
sure.
down. You're sitting down. You're munching down on it. There. That's bullcock.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, oh, yeah, I guess this is happening. I can't
If
say I'm
that
gonna have
ever
more.
if that ever if that ever happens to you, don't tell me because I will call you a cock eater for the rest of your life.
It happened.
As you're like licking your lips, like a little drool
Yeah,
comes out. You're like, it was so good.
it's just ooh, man.
Hmm.
It can be tough, but I would say like you go most places they eat quote unquote normal food. You know what I'm saying? Like that humans eat. I mean, the delicacies get kind of wild out there, no doubt. But like, what you're gonna get prepared, knowing that we're not from there, they're gonna try to, appease our palate on some level. They're not gonna take us way too far outside the norm unless we say, "Yo, I want to try like your most wild dish." Unless you're asking for it, I don't think they're gonna really, really push it there. Just so that you don't feel some kind of a way either, too. We don't want to thinking that we're heathens or some kind of savages or something like that. So maybe give me some. I would have seen like some traditional, like some noodle dish or something like that going places. But there's people that complain about that. It smells weird. Blah blah blah. I'm like, yo, you guys are the most disrespectful people on the planet. Disrespectful.
Those are people who have not had enough problems
Mm,
in their
yeah,
life.
you ain't hungry enough. Starve. Go eat
No,
McDonald's. Actually, drink
yeah,
some of this local water. Get your stomach right. Yeah, yeah. Give us some ice
no,
cubes.
no. And I'm not a big fast food person, man. In fact, I would rather go somewhere and have some specialty dish, from somewhere that I don't even know what it is. You know what I mean? That's actually kind of oddly enough, like even growing up in the South, I was never a big oyster fan, but
Mm. Whoops.
oysters are considered a delicacy, right? But I'm not gonna
Mhm.
sit like I can throw a little bit of Tabasco on there and slurp it down. And I had such an aversion for that about that like for a long time. But then I kind of figured out that like okay, you just kind of take it like a shooter, I guess.
Yeah, yeah,
But the texture of it,
yeah.
I'm not
Slight.
gonna sit there and chew on it, like
Yeah,
holding it in your mouth and chew it. Some people they like pour out. I'm no, 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 no. That's
yeah.
fucking weird to me. The
My
flavor
first,
can't be that good.
it tastes like the ocean. Like for me, like my first oyster that I had, a friend of mine bought like this whole, like it's like a 24, just different oysters from all over the place. Some are very briny, some are a little sweeter, all that good stuff. And I was like, oh my God. But like, they were just like, well, you like seafood, you'll probably like this. It tastes like this, tastes like the sea. And I was like, well, I'll try it. Once again, this is me like stepping out, because I know it's slimy and I'm not into like one buddy, this dude that I worked with, he said, man, like oysters is like eating boogers. I was like, boogers? I don't want to eat no boogers. It's like a slimy booger. But I mean, I tried. He put some horseradish on there.
I mean, if
And granted,
somebody says something like that to me, I'm wondering like how do you know this?
he's a picker. He's a
That's
harvester.
disgusting. That's disgusting. That's absolutely disgusting. I would not be if I found out one of my friends like picked their nose and then popped it in their mouth like it's fucking candy. We would not be friends anymore.
It's like stuck on their front tooth. Hey, how's it
Just done.
going?
Done. We're done here. Like I'm
Oh,
I'm I'm having a little bit of like a gagging right now just talking about it. Like no, there's nope, nope, nope.
really?
Let me wash down this thought with a nice glass of scotch. Which by the way, 4th of July celebrating here we go. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Here we go. Hold on. Hold
Nice
on.
with the dish on the bottom.
It's the Particularis. Have you had that one?
Let's take a-
The cigar.
Yeah.
I thought you gave it to me, but okay. And I'm washing it down with something I know you've had.
Absolutely.
Singleton. Yeah,
Yes,
buddy.
you did. Yes, you did. Okay.
You know what I've discovered about Scotch, and I'm sure someone's going to send us some hate mail for what I'm about to say, but Singleton, also named Luscious Nectar, I believe it.
Indeed.
I've realized because I like to drink my whiskeys, scotches, whatever neat,
Yeah.
but my scotches I have realized recently I keep them in the fridge.
No.
Cools them down just enough. I don't have to water them down with an ice cube. But man, like just and it's in like a 55-degree fridge, so it's not like super cold, but just
Mhm.
cold enough.
And shit, that's how I used to do like my Hennessy all the time. I'd buy a bottle of cognac, immediately put in the freezer, and then when it comes out, it's a little more, a little thicker. But I'd pour that and I'd sip it, and then, it's not gonna freeze, but I keep it in there all day long. I still got a bottle of
Yeah.
vodka from like years ago, actually. That I bought. We went to Hollywood, and it's still sitting in my freezer. I haven't drank it. Yeah,
So
somehow
speaking
made it
of
home.
speaking of things like that, I got into a conversation about what's it called, Uzi,
Well, Ouzo, yeah,
Uzo.
yeah,
That's
it's
it.
like
So
Rocky.
so my uncle, back when he was in the army, he was stationed in Germany, and he ended up meeting this really nice German lady, who's he's now married to and been married to for probably 20, almost 30 years now. She can cook. I mean, Wow. But she talks about ouzo. We had this whole conversation. We were talking about it. You know, yes, it tastes like licorice, but even if
Mhm.
you have like an aversion to licorice, this is different. Like the actual real ouzo, the stuff that so and she confirmed, it's the ouzo that like it's real, like authentic if you pour it over ice and it turns white like milk.
Interesting.
Have you heard this? Yeah.
No.
So if you pour it over ice and it has no chemical reaction, it's not it's not legit. It's not authentic. But you pour it over ice, turns kind of white, has a milky, look to it. Put her down like, oh my god,
Never had it
so
on
good.
ice. I've always had it like a sipper. It's always been like room temp. Never had it on ice before. Like I had it's like ouzo. Granted, some sort I got to kick my behind. But to the best of my knowledge, so in Greece, I was drinking Rocky, and Rocky was
Mm.
like I guess it's like the equivalent to
It's very similar,
ouzo,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
Turkey has the ouzo. I guess they're the ones that make the ouzo. From what I understand, that's the way it was explained to me. Ouzo
Yeah.
is Turkish, Rocky is Greek. If you mix them up, someone's gonna whoop your ass because they're territorial about that booze and they got their own little history, whatever. From what that's the way it was understood, explained to me, and I was like, oh, okay, understood. So yeah, had the Rocky, had the ouzo. It's the anise that gives it that flavor though, the anise in
Oh,
there.
I was
So
gonna say, I wonder if it's made from like the licorice root, if that's what
I think
gives it the
anise is
flavor.
like in that family or something like that, like that kind of
It's
like
gotta be, right? Yeah.
yeah, like the Jaeger, like Jaeger is like that, or Beirão, the the liqueur out in Portugal that I love. I could sip some Beirão and make and pair that with like a cider, and then throw a little cigar with that. It's a wrap. It's a wrap. Sometimes it's just too sweet for me. All that, you know.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I'm I'm vibing.
Yeah,
Man, I'm feeling
but
like
that's
we need to
actually.
take a little trip.
I would love to go back to Portugal and do it again. I'm always game for that. Always game. Going out on me. I don't know what's happening. I think I got too many packs of Boveda in my humidor. These are a little too damp for my taste.
Mm. I took your advice, man. I let my humidor drop down to about 58, 60% humidity,
Mhm.
and I have not had a problem. I've not had a problem keeping one lit. I've not had a problem with them unraveling. It's been great.
Yeah, I got well. Yeah, like I noticed that with mine, like if I had like the perfect humidity, like because some of like maybe like this one right now, it's like too high. Humidity's too high. I got
Mm.
like a 70%er, but I put a big pack in there because I had a bunch of cigars, and it would suck it dry. It made sense. Now I only got like a maybe like five in there, and it's over
Mm.
humidifying my cigars. So now I got to kind of separate them a little bit, give them some time outside of the. I should have set this out so I could kind of dry out a
Yeah.
little bit before I actually lit it.
Well, those Bavoda packs, I mean, they advertise that they self-regulate, but if you got multiples in there,
Yeah,
yeah,
I had a bunch.
they're working against each other. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I got too much going on in there, so I'm about to
So
pull it
so
back out.
real quick, do you have? I mean, just keeping this in the realm of Independence Day,
Hmm.
and I was gonna ask something basic like what's like your favorite Fourth of July you've ever celebrated? Like where were you at? What'd you do?
Mm.
Uh, but I'll take it a little bit further, and I'll say like of all the freedoms that we enjoy here in the U.S. of A. What would you say is like your top freedom? The one thing that you're like, man, I love living in USA because I can do blank.
Yeah. Well, one thing that served me thus far, uh, that I could read a book. I like the
Ooh,
fact that we have the freedom of speech and we can share ideas. Even though like right now I feel like that's like kind of being threatened a little bit because you got to watch your mouth, everything you say, and all that. But I love the fact that we have the freedom of speech and we can write it down, and I have the ability to read it and kind of internalize it and either agree or disagree, whatever. Um, so I guess the freedom of speech. Even though there's a lot of nonsense out there, I still don't I still appreciate the exchange of ideas, unique ideas.
Well,
Yeah.
with
So
with the freedom of speech comes the freedom to be ignorant, right?
100%, 100%.
So
Um,
we got to deal with that too.
because I mean, like to me, like I don't know, it's an easy kill to be like, yeah, like I'm not, picking cotton no more. Like I'm free. But I mean, like I don't know, something like that. I don't know. To me, I think that's the thing that kind of helps you. It's helped me to see the world differently. Just to be able to
Okay.
just do something as simple as that. That they've this place is now like they're banning certain books, certain ideas out there. Back in the day they were burning books. Like what's the big deal? And the thing is, people be like, well, you're burning books. Like, what's the big deal? Who cares? Like a lot of people be like, who cares about a book? It's like, man, it's what's in the book that's the problem. Because it makes people it changes the way you think, your mind, everything. Everybody gets. I mean, however you get your information through YouTube, whatever. But it's still the idea is to exchange the information, the knowledge. So I think as long as we don't lose that, I appreciate that we have that. We have that ability to do that, and it's not. Hopefully, it's not being censored too much, where you're only getting a certain point of view, or you're only getting certain information. You should be getting all the
But
information. You know.
I think it is being limited right now, though, right? And I'm
Oh,
not
for
the
sure.
most religious person in the world, but I'm seeing, and again, I just went back to Alabama, and of course, as you might expect, my family in Alabama, they certainly have their, I would say, more traditional views on things. Where God is first, and you can only be born a male or a female, and that's it. So all this chat about having to what was it, like something about the birth certificates I was being told recently, like they're trying to go back and say that you can't identify male or female on a birth certificate, like it's got to be the child's choice at a certain age, whatever. Like when you take the basic values of like in God we trust and stuff like that. And again, like I understand, those are principles that I understand whether I'm religious or not. But when you take certain things out to insert other political agendas and
Yeah.
views of where we have to, we're making everything okay. Like you can be whatever you want, and if you're 8 years old and you say you're born a boy, meaning you're born with a penis and testicles, but at 8 years old, and I can't remember the exact law. My wife was telling me about this, but in California already, like, see if you don't agree and support your child on their decision at a certain age, and it's well before 18. I know that. I don't
Mhm.
want to say how early it is. I don't want to misspeak here, but it's well before the age of 18. If you are not supportive in your child's uh, personal whatever identity, CPS can get called on you and they can take your child away.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's like, when did we give children? I mean, look. I'll go further back on this, man. Like I've read so many books and studies, and all of them say roughly the same thing about. I won't speak about females. I'll speak on males because I am a male, and the male brain doesn't fully develop until about 28 years of age on average, right? I mean, you have some people who are geniuses who their brain is further developed, and that just makes them smarter. That doesn't mean that they are mature enough still to make certain decisions, right? So even if you're a genius, I would say if you don't tap into your most intelligent and mature of brain development until you're 28, one, why are we out here letting people pretend to be adults at 18? But two, why are we allowing the political agenda or whoever, these other people, to make these decisions saying that your child can identify as whatever they want? I mean, because up until recent years, it was up to the parents to instill those values and those beliefs and whatever it was in their kids, right?
Mhm.
And I'm sorry if this sounds ignorant to some folks out there listening, But my thoughts are still very much this. If my 8-year-old daughter came up to me tomorrow and said, Daddy, I feel like I'm a boy and I want you to treat me as a boy, and you're not going to call me Capri anymore. You're going to call me Charles. I would have to really wonder like what the influences are that are making her think that and making her want to identify as such, because it would be kind of out of nowhere, right? Versus if I had a son who was just very feminine from day one, and then at the age of 13 he comes up to me, he's like, Dad, like, I've always felt like I was a girl. I don't understand this whole boy thing, like whatever, and that goes back to my argument, like people aren't out here identifying as having, Tourette's. They're not identifying as having Down syndrome or any of these other clinically diagnosed birth defects, right? It's something from birth that was a defect, right? So I had this conversation with my cousin when I was back in Alabama, and I asked the question. I was like, hey, and I know this is going to be very controversial what I'm about to say, but it's worth talking about. And that's all we're doing. We're just talking about it because we have that freedom, right? So we're going to talk about it. Why is your sexual preference, which goes against everything that is known biologically, why is that considered a preference versus a defect, right? So if you're born with Down syndrome, that is a birth defect, right? That is something that you were born with, truly, right? Something happened, something's not right. If you're born with a dick and balls and they do a blood test and there's nothing chemically imbalanced about you, why is that not being diagnosed medically as a defect? I'm not calling it a disease. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a disease, but a birth defect. Yeah, I mean, because at the end of the day, and I read this earlier, I was laughing for a little bit. It was something like there's 8.7 billion people in the world, and those 8.7 people were born by women. So it was like women births given 8.7 billion, men births given 0. So you
Yeah.
can't argue with those odds. You
Yeah.
can't make a baby without a male and a female
Yeah.
unless
Or at least a
you're
male
growing it.
sperm in a test tube or something.
Unless Right, exactly, unless you're growing it in a test tube in a petri dish or something like that. So now you see what I'm doing. I'm bringing this full circle to the original conversation
Or a
about,
turkey baster. However that.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. I mean, but even that though, I mean, we have friends. I won't name names, but our buddy that we used to hang out with that went to go fly in Phoenix. He and his wife couldn't have a kid, so they did all the things medically, but they still took his sperm and her eggs. They impregnated those eggs in a petri dish or whatever, and put them back in her to make a baby, right? But you still had a male and a female.
Yeah.
It was not. It wasn't. It wasn't like the Antichrist theory that I have, where they cloned this human out of DNA.
Yeah. No, I mean,
So
yeah, yeah.
so how are we looking at this and saying like this is a personal choice? If it's a personal choice, I get that. Just like you have the choice to eat vegetables the rest of your life and cut out meat. That's a choice, right? But if you're sitting here saying I identify as something, which made me think even further, right? Because we know a lot of LBGTQ question mark, whatever all the things are now, we know these people and we hang out with these people. And I'm actually going to start asking these questions like, hey, so you say you're a lesbian. Is that a preference? Or do you feel like you were born a man and that's why you like women? Talking to a female, right? Because there's a difference there, right? I know I was born a man, But if all of a sudden I was like, you know what? I'm sick of these women out here giving me grief all the time. They don't think like me. They don't act like me. They don't roll like me. It's constant frustration to be married. You know what I mean? Um, so I'm gonna switch my sexual orientation to hanging out with dudes,
Mhm.
and maybe I can find a way to be sexually okay with that. But that then would be a choice, not something I identify as. So I feel like there's a big difference there. People who identify versus people who make the choice, right? If you
Yeah.
identify as something and if you've identified your entire life, that should be a medical diagnosis to say, you know what, we did the blood test, we did whatever, like you would with anything else that's wrong with you that makes you outside of the norm, if you
Mhm.
will. And people are trying to normalize all this stuff. And
Mhm.
that's what I don't agree with. I don't agree with normalizing things that are unnatural.
Mhm.
Meaning, especially when it comes to creating life.
Mhm.
There's male, there's female. You can't make a baby without a male and a female. So if you're choosing one way and it has nothing to do with making babies or otherwise, that's just your choice. Cool. Have at it. Do you. And maybe that's what gay and lesbian means, right?
Yeah.
Identifying as something else, that to me is deserves a bit of a medical diagnosis to understand why. Not just, okay, we're going to bend all the rules because you need extra attention because your dad wasn't there for you or whatever the reason may be. I don't know. And I'm
Well,
sure
yeah.
some people say it's an ignorant argument, but
Well,
fuck, I got questions. And if you're not willing to answer my questions, then guess what? Shut the up, right?
yeah.
STFU. So,
I mean, the thing is that they have kind of diagnosed it. They've been calling it gender dysmorphia. That's why I've been hearing that term kind of put out there um, numerous times. Where folks are kind of have like this identity crisis. They're like, this gender dysmorphia. So I think people, they're doing more research on it. So along those lines, right? In terms of guys feeling more like women. So I have two things, right? First, though, I didn't. So I was listening to this discussion online. This gentleman were talking. This guy was talking about. I was saying like now, like men now produce much less testosterone than men back in the day. So like testosterone is like plummeting in guys and like 30-year-old males and da da da. And he's saying like a big reason for that. And again, this is what he was saying was because of the birth control in the water supply. Apparently, you can't get that out of the water, and guys are ingesting it as increasing like estrogen, whatnot. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. So that could kind of maybe play a role in why maybe some guys feel some kind of a way. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe, right? I don't know how that works, whatever. I don't know how true that is, nothing like that. But I was like, very interesting. So there's that. On the flip side, not on the flip side, I have a question for you. Now, there is that whole video that went viral. That whole what is a woman? The guy from Mark something. I can't Mark like Walsh something like that. The guy. He created this video. What is woman? And I kind of noticed like lately, or not lately, but like women are more so under attack than dudes. Why is it that that conversation isn't pointing at men? Like no one's saying like no one's questioning like what a man is, right? It's just women. Like women, you know, like men are infiltrating like their sports or uh, identified women, trans women are going to the sports. It's a big thing though, right? But the women are under attack. Dudes are not. Because our lives maybe haven't changed. It hasn't impacted us at all, like our sports and all this other stuff. Why is it that? Why is that like a thing? Is it And I was asking one of my homegirls, is it like is it because you guys aren't fighting for yourselves? You guys aren't speaking up? You guys are just kind of taking like a chance? Like what's the deal with that? That's my question to you. Why is it that women are so like they're under like attack in my mind, right? Where dudes are becoming that. like I said, there's no like male of the year that is a female prior. You know what I'm saying? That's trans male. It's all trans women that are taking over women, but it's not going the other way. Is it because nobody wants to be a man? They prefer to be a female, like fuck men kind of a thing? Like, what is that about? I don't understand that.
Okay. All right. My off the cuff answer would be, and because this is the hill I'm willing to die on these days,
I
right?
feel like being a woman is much harder than being a dude because there's more involved. You know what I'm saying? But for me to flip the script and go that way, but nobody wants to go the other way. I mean, granted, there's just trans males out there too, but that's not the hot topic on in the news on a regular basis. It's women, you know?
Okay. Let me. Okay. I'm gonna answer your question with a question, and then I'm gonna give you my answer.
Hmm.
Male or female? Who runs the world?
Guys do.
Prime guys do. Okay.
Extent though.
So
Yeah.
no. Hold on. Hear me
Yeah.
out though.
I'm saying
Hear
men.
me
If
out.
I had, if
Okay.
I had, yes, absolutely. Like I'm saying men.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Primarily, men run the world. Right. The majority of your CEOs are men. The majority of your political figureheads are men.
Mhm.
And so it would not be too far fetched to me for me to assume that the men of the world who run things and are the power players are sitting there next to the ladies going, we should do this, we should do that because we want to support this agenda or that agenda. And the men up there are going, you know what? That's a great that's a great idea. And here's why. Here's why it's a good idea. Because while you guys are continuing to battle about this shit that doesn't fucking matter, I can continue to run the world and I actually don't have to be threatened by your bullshit because
Or
you guys are going to kill yourself off, right? You're going to sit here and I mean we've talked about this before, all these years of women's rights movements and stuff like that are being discredited now because you're allowing these you know, these trans men to become women and participate in all these different sports. Meanwhile, the women who are trying to be men just can't be. They're not. And therefore, they don't hold a stick to the actual men who are in the power position. So I think my opinion would be that it's a um what's the term here, it's a chess term, it's a political blitzkrieg,
yeah.
right? Check and mate. Like there's not a whole lot of thought you got to put into it. Like, oh, you guys want to complicate your situation and therefore force attention to this, go for it. And you're going to set yourself back 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And that's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years that men no longer have to worry about women, true women, who have real opinions that are, stated in fact, rational opinions, stepping up to the plate and going like, hey, I deserve to be here. And this is why. The closest thing, in my opinion, I can come up with, again, my opinion would be my wife. If my wife decided to run for president, granted, she has me standing by her side, um, I would be like, I support you running for some political office because my wife is very logical and she's very rational, in those situations.
Mhm.
But I mean, but my wife, if my wife got into that situation, this would be the hard part for her, is she would now have to deal with all that shit, right? She's like, because she's a woman now, every woman or person who identifies as a woman or whatever is going to be up her ass going, we want our opinion heard. We want you to stand up for us. Meanwhile, men who identify as men, who are just men, who are like, hey, I got this, that, and the other agenda, are going to go up there. And real men, truthfully, and this is going to sound harsh, don't give a fuck about the bullshit.
Yeah. Right. You know, you say so. You said like who runs the world? Men do. Why do you think that that is? Why is it that men rule the world? Because it's not like women don't have any kind of power of their own. It's not like they're not beasts in their own right. Why is it though? Is that why is it that men rule the world? Aside from like we kind of rigged the game back in the day.
I'll tell you right now. I'll tell you right now, and this goes exactly with what I was just saying. And here I'll give you an example. And this is all over TikTok, Instagram, all the different things. People making fun of being a marriage and a relationship, right? Women want to be heard, but they don't want their problems answered. Men are designed to create answers for problems, and it's immediate. It's a logical decision, and we go, this solves the problem. We don't need to keep talking about it. So I think men rule the world because they're able to come to a logical conclusion faster and leave the emotion out of it. And that's why men run the world. Women want to overanalyze and they want to hear their feelings and et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, okay, we can spend 10 times the amount of time focused on making sure your feelings are being heard versus the words that are coming out of your mouth, and let you ultimately come up with your own opinion and what you and I would call growing up learning the hard way. We can
Yeah.
do it like that, or I can take my life experience and the input from my trusted advisors, and we can come up with a logical opinion in minutes and
Yeah.
go, this is what we're going to do. If you put a group of men in a room with a problem to solve and a group of women in a room with a problem to solve, I believe the women will come up with the answer faster because of the way that they're able to connect everything in their brain, but they will not all agree on an answer faster than the men will. The men may not come up with the right answer immediately, but they will come up with an answer and they will execute it and go, you know what? If this doesn't work, we go back to the drawing board, knowing what we've learned from our mistake versus over analyzing the shit out of everything to the point that the problem you're talking about is now no longer relevant, but you're still stuck on it because, again, you're proud of yourself because you made a decision, right? Which women don't make decisions very easily. They're very indecisive people. They just are, and that's okay. But that's why, again, my opinion, there's a balance, men and women. Okay. My wife overanalyzes everything. I'm very quick to respond and quick to answer. But compromise in a relationship is me hearing my wife's opinions and then making a decision based on all of her input, right? And I can dumb it down to the simplest thing that a comedian said. He goes, when your wife says she wants to go out to eat, don't say, well, what do you want to eat? Tell her, tell her, I'm thinking of a place. Can you guess where we're going to go? And when she says, you're thinking Red Lobster, be like, you got it. You nailed it. And then you go to Red Lobster and everybody eats, right? She had her opinion, even though it was a trick. It was a trick. It was a mind fuck. Like P Diddy. Can you feel me fucking your mind right now? It was a mind fuck, right? I I'm gonna make a decision based on your input, but I'm gonna trick you into giving me input. I'm not gonna ask questions, right? I'm gonna ask one question, which is, I'm thinking of something. What do you think I'm thinking of? Oh, well, you're probably thinking this. You nailed it. I wasn't thinking anything. I just know, how do we move on from this the fastest way, because I'm fucking hungry and I want to go eat somewhere. So,
The thing is, you're not wrong, in my opinion, because that's been my experience. Especially like the more to me, it seems like the more powerful, more capable a woman is, like in life, right? They're out there being bosses. They're doing this and doing that. Every woman that I've met, dated powerhouses, right? Like they do their thing, right? They're out there jamming. However, when they get with someone like, let's say like myself, right? They don't want to make decisions anymore. They've been doing it all day. They're exhausted. They're like, yo, you tell me. And I just want to just do. I'm like, okay. And for me, I was always been like a 50-50 thing, like forever. And it still is, I feel that way now. It's still the same. However, I will take the input, but ultimately I'm gonna be like, we're not doing this dance. We're not gonna do this roundabout all day long. This is what we're doing. Case closed. Are you for or against it? And like usually they're like, all right, let's just go do that. Like they're not arguing with me. It sounds good. Sounds good to me. Now if you change your mind or whatever, that's fine. But this is where we're headed. And then we end up going there, having a great time. Case closed. Because like I said, that all that analysis paralysis. We'll be sitting here, we'll be spinning our wheels, doing nothing for the next 3 hours if I leave it up to you. Now, a lot of times, though, I think that's why, I don't know. I think once the decision is made, once a guy's made the plan, I think the execution, a lot of times, like they start planning. Now they can go into planning mode and then they can bring that to fruition. Like, I'm not a party planner. This is not my style. You know what I mean? However, in terms of what we should be doing and how do we get there, you can kind of give, I'm not going to say marching orders, but you can be like, yo, this is what we're going to do. Here's the vision. And once we're all on the same page, they can start just executing. Boom, boom, boom. You do this, you do this, do this. Because I feel like there's a lot of things like I don't want to do, but like women that I dated, they're like, okay, yeah, I could do that for you. I could do that for you. I'm like, well, you don't have to, but they like want to. Like they're like in serve mode at that point. They want to serve in that way. They want to help me in that way, which I have a hard time dealing with a lot of times.
And that's probably the very essence of equality. Not to cut you off, but I'm
Hmm.
dude, like I love this conversation so much because you're absolutely right. So and again, I'll use my situation with my wife. My
Hmm.
wife she's an analyzer, she's a thinker, she's a planner, she's all these things, and I am a doer. I'm
Right.
an executor, right? So we'll talk about things, even with we'll just take like we're remodeling our house and we're doing ourselves, right? So she'll be like, hey, what do you think about doing this, that, and the other, whatever. She'll come to me to make a decision, like, okay, we're gonna do this, but then she'll add something to it, and it'll be her perspective, and I love her perspective because I will make, like, I'll slap the table and say we're gonna do this, and then she will add her input, and then I will just do a minor course correction. And
Uh-huh.
for and that works so well because it's like, okay, you know what, I didn't think about that, but that's a great point. Let me course correct, and I can course correct in an instant,
Yeah.
right? I don't have to spend a lot of time thinking about it. It's just like, you know what, that's
Makes
fucking
sense.
fantastic,
Yeah.
thank you so much. And now we're going to do this, right?
Yeah.
So we were going, at a heading of 270. She said something, I'm like, right, there is a thunderstorm up there, let me correct to 265. And that's a flying reference, obviously, but um I know you understand exactly what I'm saying. So it's just a minor course correction, so, but I was going to say about equality. If men and women understood biologically how they were designed more, if they focused more on understanding themselves versus just getting what they wanted, women would then understand, the women who have a problem with this. And I would love to have my wife on this conversation because she would agree. If women understood their place, and that's not saying that they're subservient to men, if they understood their place next to a man and the value that they have in that relationship, they would understand just how much power they actually have, right? So you have a headstrong man who's willing to make a decision, but he's also willing to take your input. There is no stopping. That is the essence of a power couple, right?
Yeah. I mean,
So
I think I've always said this, and I feel it's like 100% true. Every powerful man out there has always had a strong woman behind him to kind of help him flesh out whatever he should be doing, right? He's not just sitting there saying like he's not just putting it all on himself. He's kind of conferring with her, like, yo, like, so she's like, tell me, can like for me, one of the things that like women always want to ask, like, how was your day? What's on your mind? They want to hear all the things. And for me, I'm like one of the worst people you can ask that to because I'm like, I don't want to talk. I don't want to talk feelings. I want to make decisions. I need more input so I can execute something. I'm not gonna sit on this forever. You know, but I think it's just that. I think when dudes are sitting there, that's like, yo, like, what do I do? It takes her to kind of help because they are those brains, right? They can sit there and give you more options. They're thinking about all these different things, right? They're analyzing it. You get all the input. It's like, okay, cool, great idea. Like you said, right? It's a great idea. I'm doing it. Boom. And they're like, okay, cool. Like ultimately, the decision was gonna fall on you, but then she's with it though. She's gonna ride with you till to the end.
So let me bring this up too, and this may not be the most popular thing that I've ever said, um, but and I'm just thinking about this right now, and I'm actually just having this revelation. As far as political figures go, if you look at the Obamas, he operated as a man, but she was such a powerful figurehead standing next to him, and they actually got a lot accomplished, and a lot of um, it was not popular, but that's because it was different, right? Like people aren't used to the president giving the first lady that amount. I mean, perfect example, right? The Obamas versus the Trumps. Okay, so if you go to the South where I'm from, everybody's like Trump, hero, and I agree with a lot of the things that he was doing because he is an extreme alpha male. And people are going to revolve around that. And I'll give you an example of that in just a second. People are going to revolve around an extreme alpha leader, right? Because that's what that kind of equates to. Obama was a leader, but he gave away some of his power. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing. He gave some of his power, or he used his power to empower his wife to further other things that are very important. I mean, as far as women's rights, uh, uh, we talked about famine in the U.S. of A. I mean, Michelle Obama did a lot for that, as far as taking care of children in need and stuff like that, right?
Oh, you
So
see me there?
she, she yeah,
Jeez.
so yeah, and she had a lot of great ideas that he used his power to empower, and that's great. That's great. I love all that. Keeping the politics aside, I love the way that they operated together, right? Versus, and again, this is just 100,000 foot level looking at it from an outsider view. Trump, who I agree with a lot of his stances on things, and I agree with a lot of the decisions that he made as far as even interactions with the foreign governments and foreign policy and stuff like that, keeping people at bay, right? He's the alpha type that's like, well, I'm not going to entertain this. Period. Fucking dot. But that's him talking to, right, people who would otherwise not talk to anybody, like Putin, like Kim Jong. You know what I mean? He sat down with these folks, and everybody's like, "Oh, he's in bed with them." I'm like, no, he's talking to these folks, and he's representing something that people here in the U.S. are not comfortable with because they don't live in Russia or North Korea. If you lived in Russia and North Korea, you might be going, he's our saving grace if this works, right? So he was able to infiltrate some political realms that no other president has been able to infiltrate for decades. So you gotta take the good with the evil. I mean, really, right? Pick your poison. So I'll give you an example of that, though, and I explained this to my wife when we were back home in Alabama. I was over at my grandmother's house, and there was a bit of an argument that broke out amongst some of the women that were sitting there, and they argued and they bickered back and forth, and it got heated until I spoke. Okay, and this is people gravitating towards an alpha person, right? Had my cousin been there, male, had he been there, it would have perpetuated the argument because he's not respected. He's not the alpha. Nobody wants to follow him, whatever. When I show up, people are like, oh, it's Joe. And when he speaks, we should probably listen. And when he says, we're done with this, we're going to be done with it for now. If you want to continue when I'm gone, you can waste your own time, but you're not going to waste my time, right? And Blair, my wife, she's asking, she's like, because she hadn't really seen that side of my family, that particular interaction before. And I said, babe, like this has a lot to do with, um, culture. And down there, they still believe in following the alpha, whoever it may be. When I'm not there, someone steps up as the alpha, whoever it may be. Could be my aunt, could be my grandmother, could be my uncle. I don't know. But someone says something and everyone else is quiet at that point in time. There's no more arguing. There's no more pressing, pushing to test, let's see how far we can go with this. It's like, no, we're done here. So culture has a lot to do with it. Um, Going back on something else you mentioned earlier, and not to backtrack too much, but I wanted to bring up. Now I'm going to lose my words here. Uh, uh, God, why am I forgetting the term for it? Okay, all right. I do this every episode, so I need you to help me with a word here. Um, Monkeys becoming humans, evolution.
Evolution.
That's all I had to say. Right. So you talked about, the water and the birth control and all that kind of stuff. I think that another aspect that could be contributing to men's lowering of testosterone or whatever would be simply being beaten down in an environment where they don't know how to rise above. So evolution is evolution, right? So if something isn't working or some aspect of nature is being beaten into submission, whether that's what they were designed for or not, eventually they will submit, right? If the pressure is on long enough, they will eventually submit. And so when you live in a culture like we do, where everyone hates white males, right? Everyone hates, the power of the alpha male in general. But when so many people are identifying as so many different things and everybody is against biological normalcy, which would be me and you, eventually they begin to cave. Maybe one or two will rise above and continue, but we'll see how long that lasts. I mean, forever. You know what I mean? If this continues this way,
Even though society might be beaten, I think those the ones and twos that rise above, they start to dominate. You know what I'm saying? I think they start to dominate.
well,
You
I
know,
think I think
they
so
take over
too. I think so too. But
because
unfortunately,
you can't change like nature's
there will be
nature.
some who are never given that opportunity.
Oh yeah, true, true. Maybe because I don't think they probably have never seen it. You know what I'm saying? If everybody is acting one way, right, and they've never actually seen it, the guys, I mean, you look like like a lot of this stuff, right? Like the ones kind of like, I don't agree with this. This isn't something's like whatever, forever. They just kind of see it differently. I think when they step up, people are gonna be like, you know, he or she is making way too much sense. Like it just makes sense to me, And once again, like the books, right? I think nature is nature, man. Let's just be clear. You can all this blah blah they're talking on the world. They're trying to you know, gender this and all that. Listen, that stuff is it could be whatever it is, like whatever. That's beyond my realm of understanding. However, I think when you get those onesies, twosies that do what they're designed to do, people are gonna follow that. You see that?
I'm gonna make another Wedding Crashers quote here, and I know you've seen the movie. So when Christopher Walken is sitting there and he goes, "Nature versus nurture, Lodge. Nature versus nurture. Nature always wins."
100%, 100%. Someone's gonna step up, and someone's gonna, like I said, and it doesn't have to be necessarily male. There's some women out there that are hardcore leaders. You know what I mean? And they'll push that, and that's just what's gonna happen. And people are gonna be like, oh my god, like. But I think that's where you get the one that starts leading like this flock of people who can't really think for themselves, and they follow this person because they got the ideas, they got the drive, they got all these qualities about them that makes people rally behind them. You know, And then that's how you get I mean, that's how you get some of these leaders from back in the day, the MLKs, the Malcolm X's, dare I say the Hitler types. You know what I'm saying? Where people kind of just follow him because, like, you know what, this is like a strong figure. You know what I mean? Who embodies all the things that I wish that I could be. You know, their talk is sense to me. You know, whether it be good or bad. You know, I mean, and I ask people all the time, like, yo, imagine if Hitler did used his gift for good. If what he was spouting was not the hate and kill folks and all that other stuff, like just the whole what we know him to be. Imagine if that flipped the other way and he's like a Gandhi or a Mandela, you know, some of these other people that, you know, fighting oppression and all that. And what if he was a spokesman for Jewish folks? What if, you know, as opposed to the other way?
Well, yeah, and not to go down that rabbit hole too far, but I think Hitler's agenda was not out of hate. I think it was based in control. He
Oh yeah,
wanted to
it's always
control.
that.
He wanted to control a
Yeah,
population
and power.
that he knew if he didn't eradicate would easily uprise and overthrow him. Right?
But fear, yeah. I think that's also too, like, I think we're wired differently. That's why dudes rule the world. You know what I'm saying? Like, dudes are power hungry. Like, that's what we do. We want to dominate. You know, women, that's not really their cup of tea. We're wired completely differently. You know, so like, for us, brute force, whatever the case might be, we'll take what we want. You know, not to say that women won't, but like, we just operate completely different. Like, our hard wiring is just different out the womb. And granted, like
Yeah.
you said earlier, we all came from a woman. You know what I mean? I think that's just why men are where they are and women are where they are. We're just wired differently. You know, the nurturing thing, that's a woman thing. Dudes, we're out here just, like you said, we're out there to go do. You know what I'm saying? Oh, you know what? Lewis and Clark, them types, we're going to keep pushing west. We're going to take it all the way to see how far this goes. You know, not to say that women weren't doing that, but like, this is guys. You know what I'm saying? We're out there discovering. You know, it wasn't Christina Columbus, it was Christopher. You know what I'm saying? I'm going out, putting this boat together, getting some money. Let's go. You know what I'm saying? It's guys go out and we do. You know, but I think that's why like
Well,
we're in this. That's why guys are where they're at, and it's not to say that women aren't capable, but I think it's just what it is. You know, I'd say that women don't discover. Like once again, I'm not saying none of that, but I think it's just the hard wiring. That's just what it is.
women discover in a controlled environment. Men create create comfort out of chaos. And this is just me right now rattling things I've never actually said out loud, but it's truly how I feel. I think men create comfort out of chaos. And if I was to amplify that to what you were saying earlier, men are about dominating. I don't think we're about dominating. I think the true leaders of the world. Now, granted, there are some who begin to operate out of fear, but at the same time, you put anybody in Putin's position where his dominance is being threatened
Oh,
and
y'all
he wants to maintain,
yeah.
or Kim Jong or Hitler or anyone else, Saddam Hussein, anyone else who we have, you know, who we've defined as, a brutal leader, whatever else, they were intrinsically probably motivated to protect what they had built, and that is the essence of a man. I will protect my home. I will protect my family. I will protect what I have built to try to make it so that those who come after me will continue to be successful in whatever it may be. Now, do they go about it the right way? Maybe not. I mean, hindsight's always 2020, right? Uh, but I mean, I think men truly, if I was to dumb it down, because I know how you and I think, if we could take all the chaos in the world and align it to our objective, so that we could just smoke cigars and drink whiskey, and everything else is just on a level playing field that we don't necessarily have to worry about, there's no telling what we might do to make that happen. And with that comes war and dominance and because we're all different, right? I mean, people are
Cultivated.
raised people are raised with, the environment they have, right? So if you were raised in a war torn country, and so war is all you know as a solution, but you manage to make it into those higher ranks, and someone threatens what you've established, war is the first answer, right? Or if it's like, hey, you question my authority, well, in some countries the easy answer is you're not alive tomorrow. You're done, right? So you get in line with what I've built and what I've created, or else I'm going to end you. And not to say anything about the US, but I would say if I was in their shoes and the US comes in for whatever the US's objective is, but it threatens that particular person of power and what they own, they're gonna fight back. I mean, I think that's just, I think that's normal.
It's human
No,
nature. Yeah, it's opposing views. It's like, yo, I don't agree with
yeah,
you. But now I'm gonna. But the thing is, this what I'm saying. Like, I think it's like this like power thing, right? Like where we, like like the more dominant species is going to take out the weaker one. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's just life. You know what I'm saying? Like for guys, you know what I'm saying? Like you said, to keep what I have or whatever, to protect my family, whatever. We're gonna go to war. We're gonna fight. I don't agree with you. You're forcing me to do something. You're gonna get that pushback. And what other way to resolve it other than someone has to go? We can't have two alphas in the same place because we can't coexist. Someone has to leave. Someone has to either be killed or whatever. I think that's just
yeah.
human nature. But I think that's
But
where,
I,
like, with dudes though, who's going to
yeah,
oppose this guy?
but that's
Females
where
are going to do it.
that's
They have to get
where
a little.
that
They have to think about it. They have to kind of plan around that. You know.
yeah, that's where the ultimate maturity comes in, though, right? Because we're talking about intelligence versus maturity versus human nature. I mean, I think two alphas can coexist, and I'll use you and I as an example. I think you are 100% an alpha male. You're definitely a leader, and I would argue that I am. Maybe I'm not. Depends on who you ask, but you and I coexist. But you and I coexist through maturity, right? You and I have had this conversation so many times. We don't always see eye to eye. We have differences of opinions, and we've had some of those differences of opinions through this podcast, which has been incredible. That we've actually been able to document it and put it out there for people to hear. Um, but our maturity allows us to coexist versus you and I going to war against each other and being like, you know what? My ego is too big to accept your opinion.
Mhm.
And that's maturity. When you can have a big ego, you can be an alpha male, but you can accept input, right? And that goes back full circle to my relationship with my wife, the Obamas that I was talking about. If you can be a leader and accept input and make course corrections, not to make everyone happy, but to find the best resolution that is equitable for the majority.
Mhm.
That key word there being the majority, then I think you're going to be just fine, because you're never going to make everybody happy. There's always going to be the minority. The problem with our society right now is we have allowed the minority to have the majority say, or at least that's what is being presented, and that in and of itself is could be a detriment, a huge detriment to our success and our ability to move forward.
No, absolutely. Like, and I think the fact that you and I can sit here and we can talk about it is also something, and we can have debates. And even if we might even be thinking the exact same thing, but we can play the devil's advocate. You know, a lot of people can't do that because it threatens everything that they believe. They can't have that conversation. They can't just say, you know what, okay, I can see that point of view. That's different. It doesn't align with my ideology, but that's fine. I can I can see where he's coming from, you know, different background, this, whatever. But a lot of people, that for them, it threatens their existence, it threatens who they are, you know. Like for me, I can sit down with someone who has a different religious belief or political belief or whatever, you know, and I'm like, oh, okay, like I didn't know that, you know. I can sit there and I can talk about all that good stuff. Doesn't mean I have to subscribe to it 100%, but I can have that conversation with you and respect where you're coming from. I think that the big part is the respect thing, right? If no one, if you don't have like a mutual respect, then you can't have a conversation. Because that's where
That's
that
it.
now the other
That's
person
it.
now is they're shouting you down because they're trying to dominate you now. They're trying to shut you up because they can't deal with the fact that you have a different perspective and you see the world differently. And we're talking all this inclusive and all side of the third, but it really isn't that. It's just like you need to think what I'm thinking. You need to believe what I believe, and we need to push that person's agenda, whatever that might be. But there's no middle ground because you can't see it because you're too caught up. You know, I need to be right. Period. Dot. That's it. Case closed. You
And
know.
an inclusive culture to me means that everyone has the right to their opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, the world does not continue to revolve around everyone sitting here and overanalyzing each person's opinion. That, again, going full circle, is a realm in which people who will never be able to fully commit to anything get lost, right? That what'd you call it earlier? The some analyzing, what'd you call it? The
What?
analyzing paralysis or
Yeah.
whatever you called it.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
analysis paralysis. Right. If we sat here and we just tried to make everybody happy,
Mm-hmm.
it's never going to happen.
You got to, and that's what I think. That's where I think that's the with the going back to like the female. You're talking about women and decision making and all that. That's where they don't want to make that tough decision where someone's going to suffer, right? On a grander scale, someone's going to suffer. But if we feel right, because the thing is, a lot of stuff happens because people are doing trying to do the best that they can for the group. Ultimately, it kind of becomes something else. Like, you know, everything starts out as being good. Like, you know, I'm doing this for the better, the greater good, whatever. But someone suffers for that, you know, and unfortunately, it takes sometimes a lot of war to have peace. And then a lot of that peace ends up turning back into war because people get complacent and they start feeling some kind of a way. Things are too easy. Like I think like right now, I think in the States it's too easy. You know, so now we're kind of like idle hands almost. You know, we're trying to find something else as opposed to just. But then the status quo needs to be challenged, and I think that that's great. I think that's like the beauty of like the States is that I think people the up you know the way people are feeling right now is just that the status quo, which doesn't jive with a lot of folks. Like this needs to change. So there, you're getting this pushback. And I think which is great. Start the conversation, have the conversation. Let's find a better way forward. You know, times have changed. You know, if nobody pushed the envelope, then who knows where I'm at? Because the status quo in 1900 ain't the status quo now. You know, the status quo back in the day has me doing some things I don't want to be doing. What my ancestors were doing. You know, so I think we need to keep challenging it. We need to keep pushing it. But like, where does it end? You know, like how far do we go? I don't know. Like, why can't the thing about it
Well,
is like, unfortunately, like everybody just can't get along, which sucks.
let
Which
me
is
let me let, let me
unfortunate.
present another example, right? Again, this is just kind of off the top of my head here. Okay, I had a guy tell me years ago that the only way to recage everybody, like truly recage everybody, would be to have another. He said, "Shoot 'em up war." In other words, another World War III, where men have to be men and women have to be women. Right now, let me follow that up with my example. My example would be that my wife is a nurse. Okay, and without saying too much, I am who I am. So if my wife was sitting here right now, we could ask her and go, "Hey, if shit ever kicked off and we gotta strap up and we're going to war, do you think my wife would step in front of me to try to lead that movement? Or would she say, we're going to follow you, and I'm going to take care of the folks that I can take care of along the way. And that's not just her having a nurse mentality, although she is a nurse. But I think that in that moment, if I said, hey, we got to go now, we're moving out, we're going this direction, I would be very focused on this is how we survive. And along the way, again, she would give me the input and go, hey, have you thought about this? And I would make, again, that course correction, but continue to lead. And I would lead from the very fucking front. My wife would be behind me. My kids would be behind me, because this is not a demeaning statement. This isn't me saying I'm better than them. This is me being in a protective posture of my family, saying my wife and my kids will be behind me and I will protect them until I can't. But I will take her input, because her input could inevitably be the result of our survival, right? I mean, people need to change the way that they're thinking. Everybody thinks it's male versus female. People aren't understanding. Like, you don't want to be tolerant of my feeling. Fuck your feelings. When it comes down to survival, the stronger are going to lead, and everyone else is going to fall in line and do what they can to help with the survival. But very few folks actually know how to lead, right? Lead from the front, take input, course correct where you need to, but continue to move forward, right? That takes a very strong person to stand in front of, to face all the bullshit head on and say, I will protect you. But behind me, but what people fail to realize is that those people standing in front, leading from the front, rely on everyone behind them for their success.
Absolutely. You can't do it by yourself. Absolutely.
No,
Yeah, you can't do it by yourself. And that's people chiming in, from all directions. Once again, I don't know. Man, I agree. It's not a gender thing, you know. Unfortunately, like it is right now, like in the states, it's because once again, I
if
think people don't feel that their input is even being considered. You know, they're just kind of like, you know what, I'm getting shitted on, and you guys are making, you're generating policy that doesn't apply to me. It applies for just you and yours, right? And they're not thinking of the greater good. Especially, I can only imagine being like a president. Right now, abortion is under fire. That's like a heavy, heavy topic. There's a bunch of stuff, a lot of issues that are going on, but everybody has their points of view on how it should be handled. You know, what do you do? What do you do? You can have all the best, the great minds in the room, but ultimately you're gonna have to come to some decision. You got to make a decision on something. And some people are gonna be with it, some people are not. You know, once again, I think that's like the beauty of it all is that the debate. How do we do this? How do we find this middle ground? How do we all keep moving forward where everybody feels like, okay, like this, I don't agree with this, but you know what? I can rock with that. Fine. I can deal with that. You know, doesn't work for everybody. City people
I
versus
br-
people out in the more rural land. Two different, mentalities right there. You
I,
know,
I may I may be oversimplifying, but I look at my girls, right? I got an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old, and when they have a disagreement, my 8-year-old gets upset. I bring her to the side and I say, hey, baby, I was like, is this worth being upset about? Like, is it worth being upset about where you got to like vocalize how upset you are? Or could you easily just walk away and go do your own thing and be happy in your own space, right? And I think if everybody looked at it that way and said, you know what? Can I be happy in my own space, or do I have to make everybody miserable with my emotions? What's the better option? The better option is to shut the fuck up and go be happy in your own space, right? You don't have to make everyone. My 8-year-old is very opinionated. She's very emotional. And I love her to pieces. She's so smart. But I'm like, sweetheart, when your emotions are getting the better of you, does you getting upset with your sister today, does that change tomorrow? Does that impact your life? Or could you walk away and be happy by yourself in your own environment? And then when you're calmed down and you're ready to tolerate your sister who is 4 years younger than you and doesn't have the emotional control or the logical understanding of the way the world works at an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old, level, is it worth maybe just stepping away and coming back once she's moved on? How about that? How about just shut the fuck up and go do you? Go do you in an environment where no one's going to tell you not to do you. No one's going to argue with you, right? We live, right? We live in a free world where you can do that. Go be you. Stop pushing your opinion. And I mean, we focused a lot on the LGBTQ community and stuff like that because it's a hot topic in the media, which is just garbage. And everyone knows that. Everybody knows it, and everyone acknowledges that it's just garbage. It's just filling up the streaming with opinions that don't fucking matter today. Because you could all choose, everyone could choose to go be happy in their own world, in their own little area where no one's telling them they can't. But you're asking for more because you want more people to be on board with your way of thinking. But your way of thinking is not necessarily what the majority thinks. It's not the norm. You can fight the norm. And people are like, oh, slavery, whatever else. Like, slavery was not the norm. That was an unfortunate part of our history that happened, right? It does not, it doesn't, I mean, look at you. It does not, you have a master's degree in international business. It does not define you because maybe you had ancestors who were slaves. And me growing up in the South with those ideals and morals and values does not define me because we have grown and risen above it. We chose to operate in a different world where we could find another way to succeed in life. And once we got to that point of succession, that point of power, we were able to come forward and then have a valid argument and a valid statement and a valid representation of who we are that people will listen to. So go gain the maturity and then come in with a logical argument, not just I want it now. You need to think how I think, or I'm going to be mad at you. I don't give a fuck if you're mad at me. And yes, I ask my 4-year-old constantly, do you ever get what you want when you throw a fit? She'll tell you. She's like, no, Daddy, I don't. I'm like, then knock it off. Knock it off and find a new way to come back and ask me for what you want. And at a 4-year-old level, I'm just asking her to come ask me in a polite, respectful way, right? If she comes up to me and she's whining, pitching a fit, whatever it may be, because she wants an ice cream cone, I'm not going to give it to her. I'm not going to give you something because you're whining and complaining about it. But if you had to come up to me, and said, Daddy, do you think I could earn an ice cream cone, whatever else, because, I'm teaching them life principle, whatever, that would have gone over better. The answer still might be no, which is another thing I'm teaching my kids. The answer still may be no, but understand that doesn't mean it's no forever. That just means it's no right now. I'm not going to give you an ice cream cone right before you go to bed. However, if you get up tomorrow morning and you put your clothes on and you brush your hair and you brush your teeth, and you go to school and you get a gold star from your teachers or whatever, then there's an ice cream cone waiting for you when you get home. Right? But don't ask me for things, situationally dependent, timing specific. Don't ask me right before you go to bed type of thing. And I could equate that to any number of situations in this world on a grander scale. Don't bitch and complain for something you want just because you're not being given it right now. Go formulate a better plan, work for it, prove that you deserve it, and then come to the table with a logical argument and say, hey, I would like this. But be okay if the answer is no, because your timing still might be off.
Well, I guess with some folks, though, LGBTQ, whomever, how long does one wait? Right? If you go off onto your own devices, some folks feel, right? I'm trying to go do my own thing, but the rules are set up against me where I cannot do that. For instance, like folks wanting to get married or whatever. the rules don't allow me to do these different things. So I have to be the squeaky wheel. You know what I'm saying? If I sit back and just kind of just play along, it'll never change because now the powers that be are comfortable. Like, hey, obviously they didn't want it that
That's
bad. So
that's what
why
I
am I
just
going to
said.
change anything?
That's
You
what
know
I
what I'm
just
saying?
said, though. I mean, they fought for it for a while, like just like you talked about, like women and equality. You
Mm.
know, like you can fight and you can fight, you can fight. Somebody's going to be the squeaky wheel, and that's fine. But timing, unfortunately, for is everything. I mean, nothing is ever going to be equal.
Now,
Nothing is ever going to be equal. And sometimes no is going to be the answer. I'm not saying you have to accept no. I'm saying that if you hear no, don't pitch a fit over it.
yeah,
Go back, regroup, formulate a stronger opinion, whatever it may be, and then present that. And
but
then keep doing that
yeah,
until you get what it is you want.
but I think that's what's happening now. They're pursuing and they're pushing and they're pushing and pushing. Folks in general, I'm not just putting one group. They're pushing because they're like, you know what? I'm sick of this. I'm over it. It's time for us.
What
Something's got to give.
who is pushing what, and what are they pushing against,
Well,
right?
I think it's kind of it's what you're saying, right? In terms of, and I think this is where it's kind of like, okay, like what is it that you want, right? Like just say if it was just, for instance, just say like marriage or equality. So okay, you got your equality. Let's just say you got the, equal across the board. Now, dependent, regardless of what your sexual orientation is, you are now you can be in the workplace and be who you are, your true self, right? You can for me as a black person, those that have dreads, you can wear dreads in the workplace, right? It's when I think now it's gotten beyond that. I think that's where like I guess the a lot of people are getting pushback or they're not really feeling aware. Now it's gotten to like the pronouns, right? And all these
Yeah,
other
but
things,
I mean,
right?
hold on. Let's talk
Mm,
about that for a second, though. I mean,
yeah.
again, we're talking about time and place. We're talking about dreads in the workplace. We're talking about hair extensions. We're talking about fake eyelashes. We're talking about long nails and stuff like that. Like, look, I mean, I don't. I think anyone who listened to our podcast long enough to this point, they understand that you and I have a military background. It's really hard to shoot an M4 with long nails.
Wait.
If you're a pilot, it's hard to wrap up a bunch of dreads in a helmet and go fly an aircraft, right? So some things are rules and based on the appearance of what we represent as a larger group, right?
And
Even if you're sitting in a back shop somewhere and you're never going to see battle, you're never going to wear a helmet because you don't fly, you're never going to shoot a gun because all you do is push papers and stuff like that. Now you're fighting against a a a perspective of what all of us represent, right? And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, if we ease up over here, then we have to allow it over here. But over here, with the guys who and girls who shoot guns and fly planes, it doesn't make sense. You
indeed.
can't do it safely, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we can't have F-35 pilots going up and try to strap on an oxygen mask and a dread braid gets in their way, then they get hypoxic and the plane goes down because the pilot, died of hypoxia, and so we lose that asset, right? So
Sure.
there's the greater understanding of what's happening
Yeah.
so that all of us, can look uniform. But
I'm
we're
talking
also
about,
talking about
yeah.
okay, go ahead.
No, no, but no, I'm saying like in a civilian sector, right? That doesn't
I don't
apply.
know. I don't know
You
why.
know,
I don't know why it would mind in the civilian sector.
well,
I
but,
mean,
that's been like a thing, right? Where
unless
and I
it's a
can speak for.
company.
That's what I'm saying. In terms of like black folks, like people, for instance, like someone who's Muslim, a woman that wears like a burqa or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like this is who she is. I mean, this is where she comes from. This is how she was raised. This is her religious background. Da da da.
Yeah.
But folks, that means not so much now, but back in the day, you you weren't getting hired. Period. Dot. Like a black dude had to come in there with a fade. couldn't come in there with dreads because of the stigma behind it. You know what I mean? And like no, absolutely not. You couldn't come in and be openly gay and be hired. They'd be like, we don't want you here. You know what I mean? Just because like that's not how the powers that be saw you, and you didn't represent what they represented. You know what I'm saying? And then this is what folks are kind of pushing back on, like, well, this is who I am. And this is like in the military side makes sense, but like in the civilian side, WTF? You know?
Okay, let me play devil's advocate on that.
Mm-hmm.
One, let's say you're the owner, you're the CEO of a major conglomerate and a law firm, for example, right? If you're a law firm, I'm going to go extremes here. I'm going to go extremes because I feel like that's where I have to go to make my point. Okay, you're the head of a law firm, and you're being forced due to HR to hire different ethnicities and whatever else. So, one, the easy button is, do I hire people who I know are going to do the job correctly for me, or do I hire people based on the fact that I'm being told I have to be more inclusive? Well, one, if I'm a business owner, I'm going to hire the people who are going to work the hardest for me and whatever that means. Okay. So if you come in and, you're incredibly intelligent, but you dress like a clown because you identify as a clown, um, and I have to worry about everyone else's opinion of you going into a courtroom where they're like, why is there an actual clown representing this person? I'm going to make my own assessment of that company and that person in question. And now the focus is not on the legal argument. The focus is on the fucking clown in the room. So you could be the best lawyer in the world, but if people are focused on your appearance, they're not going to focus on how smart you are. They're going to focus on your appearance and they're going to discredit you immediately. So, I mean,
That's
this is
also
also
dependent upon, and I think that's where we have like this is where like folks have the issue. It's just that the people that are running in that courtroom are all the same. You know what I'm saying? They're all the same. So they're going to look at you as like WTF. There's no representation of other folks in that courtroom to be like, oh well, he's a clown as well. Like the judge has a clown background or something like that, where it's no big deal. It's different. You know what I'm saying? If you come in there with dreads, say you got the suit and everything else, but you got dreads because that's like your hairstyle, and it's just and it's done properly. You know what I'm saying? You got dreads, it's tied back, you look sharp, but you have dreads, and everyone's looking like, what the hell are you doing in this courtroom? Why is that a big deal? If the argument is indeed now, granted, you're looking at a panel of someone who looks nothing like you, yeah, you're going to stand out, and people are going to question you. But if you got some people that, at least in that courtroom, and we're all talking business, and other folks, like say if you're doing, and this is just me just putting it out there, not to say that everyone's the same. If someone who
you're also
you got
playing
the
devil's
one,
advocate,
hundred
and I
percent,
appreciate that.
yeah.
Yeah.
If you got one of these twosies in your of your heavy hitters, right? Some people that are dreadheads, people got some Asian folks, whatever. You go in there, no matter where you go now, if you're doing business with other Asian folks or other black folks, they're not going to look at you different. You're not going to be the clown. You know what I'm saying? Maybe the person who's, the one white guy or even the Asian guy with a bunch of black dudes, they're gonna stand out. It's like, yo, like, huh. And they're looking at you like he's different. You know what I'm saying? It all depends on where you're at. If you're doing business in Africa, that's not a big deal. You're doing business in Europe, maybe it is. It kind of depends on where you're at because everybody's different. So you kind of want to have different folks in there in order to
I
push that.
agree, and that's the evolution of humanity, right? I mean, but people have to accept the fact that it's not immediate, and I'm sorry, but it's never going to be immediate. I think intrinsically, the majority of us don't like excessive change, like especially if it's forced on you, right? Anything, take it out of the courtroom, take any situation. If something that is outside of your comfort zone, what you know as a human person, just you,
Mm-hmm.
and someone forces something on you that is so drastically different from what you know, from what you believe, your moral standing, values, upbringing, whatever it may be,
Mm-hmm.
it is up to, right? And I'm sorry, so this is where you pick your battles. We've been taught this our entire lives. Pick your battle. Do you want to be successful, or do you want to die on a hill that includes you having dreads?
Well,
Well,
in the short term, you're gonna have to do what you got to do to be successful until you, like you said, you get into a place of power where you kind of
and
ascended the
then
ranks, and then you can
and then
start
you can
changing
affect the
policy and
change.
do that. But then that's what I'm
That's
saying
just
though is
it.
that a lot of folks feel like they can't even ascend at all because of okay, like you know, I'm this or I'm that or whatever. I got to play some other game. I can't just show up and be who I am. And they're thinking, well, why not? Why can't I just be
Well,
this person?
it's unfortunate.
You
It's
know
unfortunate, and to say that that's the way that the world works is the easy answer.
what I mean?
To say that everyone who is in a power of position, I would say a position of power rather, has had to make excessive sacrifices is not too far from the truth. Now, there are some people who are just born into it, but those folks who are born into it wear the suits, have the decent haircut. They may be total pieces of shit. Look at a lot of politicians out there, whatever, and this may be the death of me, but look at a lot of people out there, the standard, who were born into it. They were born into it. They wear the suits. They speak the language, but they're just garbage human beings. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying that's okay. And I'm not saying that someone with dreads or dressed up like a clown or someone who identifies as something else couldn't be better at the job. But this is where you and I know, agree, given the opportunity to have the ability to hire who we want to hire into a company, I'm going to hire the most qualified.
Mm-hmm.
I personally, I don't care too much about your appearance, meaning I don't care if you're black, white, whatever. I don't care what color your hair is. If you represent my company and you're a strong, let's just say, earner, because every business person wants to be successful, then I'm going to hire you and I will stand beside your choices as a human being
Mm-hmm.
to a degree. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to bend to every beck and will that you have.
Yeah,
That's
true.
not good business.
Yeah.
And politics is business. The way the world works is business. So everyone has to make sacrifices. And so I'll say this: if you are the extreme on the other end of how I view you should be, and you're like, hey, I'm really good at this, but I want to have dreads, whatever it may be, and I say, hey, I will give you a shot, and I agree with your beliefs. I will make this a pleasant working environment for you. However, I want you to have what I feel as the business owner a professional look for our particular business. If you want to be successful with me, you are also going to have to make compromises.
Then at
But
that point, you're
people,
talking conformity. You have to conform in order to get to where you
it's
want to
it's
be.
not conformity, it's compromising.
Mm. But I have to change. I have to
It's it's
transform myself into
it's
something else so that we're all can get along and we can get and I can get what I want. You can get what you want, but you
yeah,
have
but
to.
if you can, okay, let's use the term conformity. If you conform to what I want,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that we're going after the same thing, you won't always have to meet that conformity standard. But we have
Always
to.
establish yourself. Yeah.
Well, it's just like anybody, man. Like you could be going for a job at a gas station and be homeless. You could be the best gas station attendant that ever lived, but if you're dirty and you haven't showered in a while or whatever else, I mean, like, if I'm willing to say, hey, I will provide you with a shower and a haircut, even though you're like, I don't care about showering and haircuts, if I'm like, I will provide you an outlet to be successful, and you're not willing to compromise enough to be successful in that environment, that's not on the business owner anymore. That is now on the person who wants everything. They want their cake and eat it too. They want
Hmm.
everything,
Yeah.
but they're not willing to sacrifice
You mean the middle?
something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you have to adapt. I mean, but the thing is, it's like, it goes both ways. I agree. I agree. You know, but it's, I don't know. And that's the thing with like the world now is just that I think now
Nobody
every
wants to conform. They just want to be who they are. And
100%.
they also, and honestly, I'll I'll antiquate it this way. People want to get paid, but they're not willing to put in the work for it. And I'm sorry, part of the
That is
work has
true.
nothing to do with your work ethic. It has to do with conforming to what the the perception of who you are is coming in starting out. If you're not willing to make those sacrifices, if you're not willing to put in that little bit of effort, make that little bit of compromise, I don't care who you are, where you are, anywhere, any nation,
Hmm.
no one's going to allow you to be successful.
Hmm. Well, I mean, and it should be just, everything should be merit based. It should be. But unfortunately, that's just not how the world works.
But
It's,
it's also even further than that, right? If you come into a job, let's say it's a high powered job, and you come into an interview, you already know the answer to this. If you come into an interview with a bunch of demands, you're not going to get hired.
you better be that damn good. You better just be that damn good.
But if you come in with that many demands,
Hmm.
they're not going to give you the opportunity to show that you're that damn good.
Well, I mean, your reputation is going to have to precede you. You can only make demands if they know what you bring to the table.
That's it.
See what I'm saying? And that's just. But once again, we're talking just merit based because at that point, it's not going to matter what you look like. It's like, yo, I know you could do this job. So listen, we need you. So what is it that you need to make this right so that you will
Look
be
at
on our team?
look look at some of these insane fucking. Let's talk about Hollywood for a second. Look at some of these insane actors out there, who have just gone off the fucking deep end, but continue to be in these blockbuster movies.
Hmm.
Everyone knows they're batshit fucking crazy,
Hmm.
and producers and directors and the money people, they deal with them because they know they're that damn good, right?
100%.
I mean, I don't know why Gary Busey comes to mind, but of people who are batshit
Charlie
crazy but
Sheen.
still make
Charlie Sheen
Charlie
got no
Sheen people,
blocking, but he brings the dough.
they
He
it's
brings the
like,
money, makes the money.
do
Or back in the day, at least. I don't know what
okay,
he does now.
look at you know what? Let's dial it down from Gary Busey. Look at Motley Crue,
Hmm.
right? Everyone knows that group of people, they're motley, right?
Hmm.
They are off their fucking rockers, or at least they were. They're much more tame now, but in their heyday, they were so far off the rocker. Guns N' Roses, like that. The labels didn't want to fuck with them. They were like, whatever, we will sell you your shit back to you. You can buy it. Just fucking go away,
Hmm.
because we tolerated you knowing you were so good, but your demands were so excessive. We're willing to let you go just so we can have some peace around here. And again, this goes again full circle, as I do, back to the conversation of the alphas, the leaders who are running these corporations, countries, whatever it may be. They will allow you in and they will tolerate you for a certain amount of time.
Hmm.
But if all you ever do is create heartache and ask for more, if you come in with a list of demands and I say, okay, and then you continue to make demands on demands on demands on demands that go completely against everything my organization stands for or represents or wants to tolerate, let's just be honest,
Hmm.
I will eventually get to a point where I'm going to cut my losses. You are fantastic. You're a phenomenal artist. You're a phenomenal actor. You're a phenomenal performer. You're a phenomenal lawyer. You're phenomenal in this space. You are one of the best, if not the best. But you are so impossible to deal with that I have to let you go. So if you look at it from that perspective, coming into some organization, whatever it may be, with your list of demands, a lot of these people, they weren't born yesterday. They've been through it before. And they're going to go, I recognize what this is. You're probably a phenomenal talent, but I can make way more off of people who are willing to conform. Again, to use your terminology, I can make more money off of people who are willing to conform versus
Mhm.
tolerating your bullshit.
Yeah. You can't be too disruptive. You know what I mean?
But everybody is being disruptive right
Right.
now. People, there's, yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. I mean, is that what happened to Shia LaBeouf? He's kind of got blacklisted. Is that what happened to Shia? I mean, he's a great
I
fighter,
don't,
but
I
he's
don't know, I don't know the man person, but I would agree with you. He's a phenomenal talent.
yeah.
But
But it
you
seems
go
like he's
so
kind
far off. Yeah,
of yeah. He's kind of
he will be one of those Hollywood came back from the depths success stories. You know what I mean?
yeah, like a Robert
There's
Downey Jr.
there's yeah, there's Justin Timberlakes who are like, okay, I'll play by your rules, and eventually I'm going to get so big and so good that I can go out on my own
Yeah.
and be successful in my own world and not be too disruptive. And then there's the RDJs who go off the deep end and have to resurrect themselves. But you see, when people resurrect themselves, they eventually conform.
Well, he's also yeah. Well, I think he had to
So
grow up.
So
I mean,
yeah. So again, they again full circle. Holy shit! If you don't label this episode full circle, there's
mhm.
something wrong here. But the full circle of independence. That'd be a good title for this one.
Okay.
There you go. If eventually people are going, if you want to be successful, you are going to conform, and that is probably the harshest reality that people need to understand. I mean, you and I, with military background, we were forced to conform starting out. But you know as well as I do, I don't conform to anything anymore. I do me. I am Papa Joe, and I do things my way. I still play within the lines, but I understand the rules and I understand how to play the game, right?
Yeah.
I'm not asking to run around with dreadlocks and earrings and nose rings and whatever else. I get my way by playing within the guidelines that are set in front of me, and I'm successful in doing that. I piss people off, but they can't do anything because I do it the right way. And there's a right way and there's a wrong way to do things, which is probably the last step to understanding your true potential. Figure out the environment you're in, figure out what the guidelines are, what the parameters are, and find a way to win inside those parameters. You're
Mhm.
going to piss people off. You're not going to make everyone happy, but you will win if you're able to do that intelligently
Mhm.
and maturely, right? And
Yeah.
maturely meaning that when you finally get a seat at the table, you don't take that as your opportunity to bitch and moan about all the things. You take your opportunity at that table and you go intelligently and diplomatically, what about this?
Mhm.
What about this? How about we try this? And eventually you get to the point where people are looking at you and they're like, he always comes to the table with great ideas and a great way forward. And then they just start to follow you. And now you're in that position of power where you get to dictate how things are done.
Mhm.
You got to be smart about it.
Yeah. Keep that position. You can start now having these debates, the powers that be, and start affecting change. You
You
may,
can show up at the table with a glass of whiskey and people are going to be like, well, that's just how he rolls.
yeah,
Who here's going to tell him not to?
yeah,
And they look around the table and they're like, not me.
yeah.
Right?
As long as he keeps coming up with them great ideas, keep doing it. Establish yourself 100%. I mean, you got to know how to play the game, and unfortunately, it's the game. You got to know how to play the game. Once you
And you
kind of
have to
master the
play the
rules,
game.
100%. You can't
Nowhere,
just
nowhere in the rules of the game does it say there's an exemption for people who bitch and moan. It's never there. It's never there, and it never will be there.
no. Dude, no one respects that. No one respects that.
Nobody respects that. Again, going back to my children,
Hmm.
if you bitch and moan and complain and pitch a fit about something, in my household, that immediately equates to you're not getting what you want.
Hmm. Yeah, you
And
guys.
even if you come to me respectfully and ask for it, the answer still might be no. And people need to understand that no is an acceptable answer.
Hmm. That's that whole entitlement thing. If you can go on that too, like, well, I feel I should get X, Y, and Z. It's like, well, why? Why should you get what you want? And this is how everybody else is feeling out there. I, there's a lot of levels to this. There's no one way. There's no answer for like a lot of this shit that's happening right now in the world. But I don't know. It's difficult. I don't ever want to be in a position where I have to do on such a grand scale, with what hundreds of millions of people. I got to, create policies for everybody. It's like shit. People are gonna get pissed.
Well,
Let
you
me
know
have,
what?
you can't have me running things. You mean?
But that's the beauty of getting to that point, that position of power. And I've been told this for many years is that if you if you're ever fearful of of the fact that if your intelligence is a distractor from your success, surround yourself by people smarter than you, because that's what good leaders do. Good leaders are never the smartest people in the room, but they surround themselves with people who are intelligent in those ways, who can give them the input. They may not be leaders, but they have great ideas.
Hmm.
But you're the person who can put it all together and
Hmm.
come up with a way forward, right? And
Hmm.
that's what I do. My inner circle is full of people smarter than me. I'm not saying I'm the leader of my inner circle. I'm just saying that I surround myself with people smarter than me because it gives me an advantage in life where I can listen to their input and I can make moves based on other people's more intelligent ideas.
Or not necessarily more intelligent, just a different perspective. It's like, you know what? Never even considered that. Shit.
I,
Okay,
I,
something else
I
to
I'm
think about, ponder. You know?
I completely agree that everyone around me is more intelligent.
I mean, it's not all the same. I'm always looking for new inputs from people from all kinds of walks of life, whatever. I don't really give a shit. I mean, because I don't know what I don't know, which I dig.
well, but that okay. So we could go with that and just say that I surround myself with people whose opinions I respect.
Hmm. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because if you're sitting here saying that you surround yourself with people smarter than you and I'm in your inner circle, but I say that I surround myself with people smarter than me and you're in my inner circle, then we're both saying that each other is smarter than the other. And I would argue that you are much smarter than I am. I take your input and I move with it. But you would say you take my input and move with it. That's just two incredibly mature individuals who have opinions that could lead to success in some form or the other.
Yeah,
And I'm okay running with that.
yeah, 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 yeah. Very interesting, man. I dig it. I dig it.
Yeah. Well,
Outstanding.
hey, you want to summarize it? We're at 2 plus 20 right now.
Um, you can go ahead and do that. I think you pretty much wrapped it up.
Ooh, I
All
think
right.
we did actually. You know what? I think we did a good job on that. That there it is.
Yes,
Catch
indeed.
us next time.
Yes, indeed. All right.
Cheers.
Tea, kampai. Got a little bit left. All right, man. Take
We'll
it
see you
easy.
tomorrow.
Yes, indeed. Peace.